All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. It is the Mailbag Segment. I always love this. I really do. And when the season starts rolling around, that's when it gets really fun because that's when people get they get their emotions going. They get stirred up by all the things that happen with the team. And so you can imagine, I didn't have the quantity of questions I thought I was going to have, but the quality always superb. If you want to know how you can get your question answered by me on the show every single Wednesday, go to my Twitter feed. You don't have to follow me, but just find it at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. Every Tuesday morning, I put out the tweet, you respond, and I answer your question live on the air. So let's get this thing started. Jeff Coons, our buddy from up north, he said, greetings from Not Matt, Canada. Calvin Austin III has been on my list of players to watch versus the Bills. I was hoping he would assert himself with more playing time. His speed is undeniable, but he has trouble shedding defenders and cannot break tackles in space. He seems to be underplaying his way toward a possible preseason cut, especially if Omar Khan adds another wide receiver from outside the organization. Is Calvin Austin III on the bubble? I would say he is. I would absolutely say he is for a couple reasons. Number one, he's not Omar Khan's draft pick, and that matters. Number two, with someone that's as small as he is, he's like my height. I'm 5'9". I'm not an NFL player. I couldn't play on an NFL field against NFL defenders. He's also ridiculously fast. But as you mentioned in your question, if he can't make some separation here with the defenders, what are we doing? You think he's the perfect slot guy. What does Coach KT Smith say every single year he goes to Latrobe? When he's in the slot, he disappears. And so if you have a quarterback, and let's just say it's Russell Wilson, who's 5'10" on a good scale as well, he's probably not seeing Calvin Austin over the middle of the field. Probably not. So could you put him out wide? Sure. And that just screams one trick pony to me. That's exactly what Mike Tomlin used to say to Mike Wallace, but he was drafted out of Ole Miss. So I think he is on the bubble. Sorry to burst your bubble, Jeff. All right, let's go to Believers. He has the Ride or Die Crew poll of the week. The position that causes the most concern is, here are his options: quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, or other. So a lot of people said offensive tackle, and a lot of people said quarterback. I actually said wide receiver because I just don't think they have the playmakers in place to not just make plays, but to get open. I watched some of those times where Justin Fields dropped back to pass, and he actually had time, but there was nowhere to go. Granted, he's playing with guys that are not going to make the team. In the fourth quarter of a preseason game, week 2, the deep ball down the seam, which should have been a touchdown, he overthrew it a little bit, but still everyone's, oh my gosh, the evaluation of that play that's been exhausting. That poor guy, I don't even know the dude's name. I think it's Luther. Yeah, he stopped. He slowed down. But even if he would have accelerated, it still would have been a tough catch in the back of the end zone. Either way, that's who he's throwing the ball to. They have nowhere to go. If Van Jefferson is your wide receiver 3 and they make a move and bring in a wide receiver 2, whether it's Brandon Ayuk or not, I think this team could be much better. I think the offensive line is going to stabilize. Give the quarterback some time. I think they make plays. All right, let's go to Ethan McNew. All right, Jeff, do you think the panic around the line is too much of a knee-jerk? This line is a majority of younger players who are still developing, and like every year under Meyer, they take time to gel. I do agree it's going to take time to gel. You also have to remember, like Isaac Seumalo has not played a lot. He got a lot of veteran days off. Aging player, I get it. He's got to get in there and get some serious reps with Zach Frazier next to him. James Daniels has played a little bit more. And then if they're going to play Troy Fautanu at right side on the right tackle right out the gate, that's going to take some time. He's not only been injured, he's also a rookie. So yeah, it's going to take some time. And I think the knee-jerk reaction, I think this line will be okay once they settle in. Let's go to RJ McCollum. Preseason is preseason. I'm not jumping off the ledge yet. I know preseasons are all vanilla, but I want to see the Death Star formation. Now, the Death Star formation is the formation where Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, when he's healthy, he's battling a hamstring injury, which we know his availability for week 1 is in question. There's been multiple reports saying he's okay, but that's neither here nor there. And then also Cordero Patterson. If they run that formation, there's no chance in hell they're going to do that in the preseason. They're going to hold that until the regular season. And if you threw Justin Fields in there, that's even more of a Death Star. I think that's actually the 4 players that they would want. We'll see. But yeah, it's vanilla, as it should be. Let's go to Brian Haynes. He said, on a scale from 1 to 10, how worried are you that the preseason blunders will continue in the season? Yeah, I'm worried that the offensive line isn't going to get it together, and I'm worried that the quarterback situation is not going to find any type of equilibrium. But at the same time, there was improvement from week 1 to week 2. You didn't have any quarterback center issues in week 2. There were less false starts and stupid penalties. Calvin Austin had one, but other than that, it was a much cleaner brand of football. Special teams tackling improved. They're moving in the right trajectory. The right direction. Let's keep that in mind. Bagels and Bong Rip says, do we have more same, less sure thing players than other teams? If less, should we assume less success? So do we have the more, same, or less sure thing players? So a sure thing player, it depends on who you're comparing them to. If you're comparing them to like the Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champions, they would have less. If you're comparing them in the division, I'd say they'd have about the same, depending on which team you're comparing them to. If less, should we assume less success? Not necessarily. There have been a lot of teams that have star-studded lineups that have not gone out there and done particularly well. So let's not draw that line to connect those two dots. I don't think it's needed. Let's go to Zach Farnsworth. He said, hey, Jeff, hope you're well. Given the early struggles of the offensive unit, how long/many games do you think Wilson is given if the lack of production continues into the season before Fields is given a chance? What other remedies are available for this flat offense? Good questions, Zach. I talked about this. I'm going to direct everyone to go check out myself, Coach KT Smith on the NFL Whip Around podcast that ran on Tuesday morning. Find it wherever you get your podcast by searching FFSN NFL. And we talked about, is there a quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh? And I asked him, do you think they're going to have a package in place for Justin Fields? He said yes. I said there's a danger with that. If Justin Fields goes into the game and they actually let him throw the ball from time to time, because if he goes out and just runs the ball every time, well, that's red flag. You know what they're going to do. So if he goes out there and they actually let him run some run pass options where he could actually throw a pass and he starts to succeed and they start to move the ball, maybe he starts making plays with his legs, it's going to be the same scenario that we had with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. You had Kenny Pickett, the rookie, in 2022, and Mitch Trubisky. And as Trubisky struggled and the Steelers lost a game or two, all of a sudden people started clamoring for the shiny backup. So if they're going to play Wilson and they're going to say, hey, this is our guy. We're putting all our eggs in his basket right now, unless there's a reason why we take them out of the basket. If they're going to go with Russell Wilson, they've got to stick with him. They've got to stick with him and hope that things work, unless he plays so bad or he gets injured. And that's the situation that they find themselves when they make this decision. So we'll see. Afton Forehead said, how worried should we be about Broderick Jones? I think that we should all be worried. We saw what happened. I got to be honest, something that this is not necessarily related to Broderick Jones. Did anyone else feel like the Bills' game plan for that game? I know I did. I watched it back and I was like, man, it looks like they studied some of the practice stuff that happened. They did the joint practice. The Steelers, by all reports, including the Buffalo media, had the best of the Bills in that joint practice. And that included Josh Allen throwing the ball, by the way. And it just felt like maybe the Bills used that joint practice as a way for them to study, to prep, to game plan. And the Steelers didn't. And so the Steelers were doing some vanilla stuff. And you got to believe, too, that like Gregory Rousseau, who dominated Broderick Jones, they probably had a lot of reps together. And he probably got a feel for what he's going to do against him. I'm not giving him an excuse, but I'm just saying the way I feel. I'm just saying what I feel. But we should be a little concerned with Broderick Jones. I want to see if he can bounce back in week 3. Let's go to James. He said, hi, Jeff. I'm sure there's a ton of Brojo questions by now. So here's another. Aside from the obvious negatives, why does it seem he is being lackadaisical in general? I can't help but notice his effort seems low with his play and support of teammates. I don't know what exactly you're referring to. I know Broderick Jones, when he gave up a sack, was the first one there to help the quarterback up. I don't know. Sometimes you don't know. Like these are young guys. I'll just make up a scenario. Maybe his girlfriend broke up with him. Maybe he had a death in the family. I don't know. Sometimes you have these situations. It's going to be up to the coaching staff to kind of motivate him, want to get better. I'll tell you this, in his young career, he's never been bashed like this before. So this is going to be a really good test for him. How does he respond? Well, we'll see on Saturday. Let's go to Eric. Is it Marchesani? I don't know. Butchered that. My bad. Here you go. What would be your DEFCON level of the coaching staff as a whole going into the season? All right. So going into the season, I feel like this is a little premature as well. Let's see here. I'm going to say it's a 3. I'm honestly going to say it's a 3 because I don't think the whole coaching staff has been bad. There's been pluses. There's been minuses. We'll see. But I'm going to say a 3 right now. But we'll see after week 3 going into week 1 what that looks like. Steelers 4-19. I felt like Broderick Jones was a bright spot on the O-line last year. Was the preseason game a sign of regression or just a bad game? Or was he not that great last year and I just had on my black and yellow glasses? That's a great question. And obviously there's going to be a lot of Broderick Jones stuff in this podcast, and rightfully so. But I do think it can be just one bad game. I think it can be one bad game. And when you hear these professionals talk, and I love when you have the NFL Network top 100. I don't care about the list. I love when they show the little snippets of, they're talking about Cam Hayward. So they get some players that play with Cam, that play against Cam. Okay, watch this play. What do you see? And there's people that say, man, this guy has wrecked me on more than one occasion. There are some players that just have your number. And there's also players that you have their number. I got to be honest, Dan Moore has Myles Garrett's number. Go back and watch the film. Myles Garrett never does well against Dan Moore Jr. He's had his moments, and that's not to say that he's not going to make his plays. He's a very good player. But Dan Moore has won more than he's lost against the reigning defensive player of the year. So you do have those situations. Let's not go crazy with Broderick Jones. Let's see how he rebounds. Let's go to Brandon Diaz. He has a couple questions. He said, I have a feeling this will be a massive mailbag. Not as big as you thought. He said, Frazier showed us a good amount of work. Is he a lock at center for the foreseeable future? Well, the Steelers did place Nate Herbig on injured reserve Tuesday. And so, yes, he is the center for the foreseeable future. I think they'll probably make an addition at some point, try and get another backup center in here to see, just have someone in case he gets hurt. Next, what is the one thing all Steeler fans should look for this last preseason week? I'll talk about that on Friday. On the Friday Let's Ride podcast, I'll do the 5 things to watch. I've been doing that all preseason. I'm going to stick to it. So check that out on Friday. The last one from Brandon. Week 1, JPJ got called on a hold. This week, he swapped his gloves to match the Bills' away jerseys, white. Do you think this helps blend the hands with the opponent's jerseys? I personally do. I'll say this, because I saw this on social media. It certainly doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt if he's to do that. So if he wants to swap them out, so if they're on the road or the opponents are wearing white for whatever reason, and he wears white, but what the hell? It's not going to, I don't think it's as keen as everyone says it is in terms of, oh, this is a big factor here. But if it helps, it helps. Do it. That's fine. Let's go to B. Selfridge. He said, number 1, do you believe we add another wide receiver before the start of the season? I do, but I'm not necessarily predicting Brandon Ayuk. I don't think the Steelers go into the season with the wide receiver room they have right now. Number 2, what's your heart saying on who should be our quarterback 1 for the season? Honestly, it's tough to differentiate my head from my heart. I think it's going to be Russell Wilson to start, and then I think Justin Fields takes over. I think that might actually be the best course of action for Justin Fields. If you're a Justin Fields guy, having him being eased into it might be the best thing for him. So keep that in mind. And number 3, what's your go-to seasoning for food? So it depends on what I'm cooking. It depends on how I'm cooking it. Am I grilling it? Am I smoking it? If I'm smoking it, what kind of smoke? Like, for instance, what flavor wood am I using? That's a very broad question. But typically, like in the wintertime, we love doing pork chops, right? Bone-in, country-style pork chops. And the best seasoning for those is generous salt and pepper. That's it. Like, you don't over-season it. Let the fat that's in that meat, let that do all the talking, because that's where the flavor comes from. So just my own 2 thoughts there. All right, let's go to Stan Rock. How often does preseason matter? He answers his own question. Never. So being preseason rarely matters. Why is everyone freaking out? That's a great question. I know why they're freaking out. They're freaking out based on the fact that they think that the Steelers should be better. They feel like they should be more prepared. And my God, they just want them to do one thing well on offense, and they can't. It's not like the passing game sucks, pass pro sucks, but they're running the ball well. They're not even running the ball well. I think, and I talked about the Bills game planning earlier in the podcast, I think the Steelers are going to game plan here. Mike Tomlin typically does that in the final week of the preseason. And so I could see them actually doing some film work, actually putting in a little bit of a game plan. This will be a better test, especially on offense and on defense too. And as we always finish up this podcast, Steeler Fan 69 provides some humor. He said, okay, let me find the, here we go. Hello, friends. He said, this one's for you. He's talking to me. He said, most bald people still own a comb. They just can't part with it. Nah, very funny because I don't have a lot of hair on my head. Thank you very much. But he says the next one. He said, what do you get when you rub two oranges together? Pulp fiction. Very good. And he's the last one. An elderly couple's in church. The wife says to the husband, I've let out one of those silent farts. What do I do? The husband looks at her and says, change the battery in your hearing aid. I did laugh out loud. I shared that with my wife. She thought that was very funny. So there you go. Those are the questions. And I get it. The Steeler fan base is they're kind of on pins and needles right now. They're not sure what is going to happen on Saturday. But just know leading up to the game, we're going to have everything for you at steelcurtainnetwork.com. I want you to check out that website. I have a lot of great stuff. steelcurtainnetwork.com. But that's not the only place where we are. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search Steel Curtain Network. You'll find us. Subscribe to the channel. We are getting really close to 12,000 subscribers. I'd love to hit that number before we get to the start of the season. Last I checked, let me check real quick. Here we go. 11,938. 11,938 subscribers. If we could get to 12,000, that would be fantastic. So if you're not subscribed yet, please go do that. Coach KT Smith just put out a phenomenal defensive breakdown for you all to check out. And he has another one coming from Zach about Zach Frazier here this week as well. Wherever you're on getting your podcast, make sure you subscribe, follow. It costs you nothing, and you want to get all of it. So you want to get the Steel City Insider coming up today at 11 o'clock. You want to get Pittsburgh Standard Time tomorrow on Thursday morning with Dave Schofield and Greg Benevent. You want to get all of it. So make sure you find us wherever you get your podcasts. There you go. And again, steelcurtainnetwork.com. Check it out. All right, that does it for me. You know how we finish these out. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Friday. Go Steelers.